Exploring the bizarre. Your e-ticket ride into the world of the paranormal. Strap yourself in as we traverse the universe, exploring the unexplained. UFOs, ghosts, lost worlds, cryptozoology, as well as other dimensions. It's time to take back the night. Now, your electrifying hosts of Exploring the Bizarre, Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz.
Tim, I don't mean to disturb you while you're meditating, but what are you chanting about?
Oh, I'm chanting for world peace, a healthy life for me and my friends, and most of all for the continued success of the show.
Well, that's very commendable of you. Mind if I join?
Well, absolutely not. Let's go. Om. Oh, well. Hey, good evening, Tim. How are you out there in Jasper, Indiana? Unless you move.
Oh, it's another beautiful day in the neighborhood here, Tim. It's Thursday night, and I'm ready, and I'm sure our audience is ready again for another fantabulous episode of Exploring the Bizarre.
We are going New Age tonight, all the way New Age. You know, we have a lot of friends who are New Agers. I don't know if I put myself necessarily in that category. I mean, people who write books like UFO Hostilities and the Evil Agenda of the Aliens. I don't know if we could be considered too New Age, but we do give equal time to the yin and the yang. And tonight it's time for the yang. or is it the yin? Anyway,
they're both equal.
All right, we'll soon find out where we are positioned in the universal flow of energy. And we've got two great guests with us tonight. One of them in particular has been a long-time friend of mine, at least on the internet, and is responsible for a great advertising campaign for some of our titles when they come out. He has a great service where he provides, I guess, several 100,000 names of people who are interested in the subject and sends out the notifications all over the world. But Tim, why should I tell the audience who we have on when that's your task?
That's right, and I'm happy to have this task, Tim. Well, tonight we're very happy to have with us Dr. Raja Murkdove and Dr. Susan Chomsky. Now we'll start first with Dr. Raja Murkdove. Now Raja is a licensed minister with a doctorate in naturopathy, majoring in iridology. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And nutrition. He practiced for over a decade with an Alabama state license around the world before becoming a full-time ET ambassador after a direct ET contact in the Yucatan jungles in 1980. We'll have to talk to him about that one. Having traveled the planet performing sacred rituals with goodly extraterrestrials after being awakened by the work of Brad Steiger in his Revelations, the Divine.
My goodness.
Yeah.
There you go. My old friend Brad. God bless him.
Oh, I know. Brad's writings influenced so many people in his life. Well, the book that Raja was talking about was Brad's Revelations, the Divine Fire. Now, Raja then led 12 disciples of the light to Palanque, celebrating the harmonic convergence in 1987. He also led 11 workers to the light to Egypt to inaugurate 1111 higher dimensional gateway, and he did that in 1991. So now, Dr. Raja Murkdove founded the Aquarian Perspectives Interplanetary Mission that offers Syrian and Pleiades blessing sacraments to life forms on this planet, and probably others as well. Also with us tonight is Dr. Susan Shumsky. Now, Dr. Shumsky has dedicated her life to helping people take command of their lives in highly effective, powerful, positive ways. She's the author of 14 books published by Simon & Schuster, Random House, New Page, and Skyhorse Publishing. A pioneer in the human potential field, she spent more than 50 years training thousands of people, meditation, prayer, affirmation, and intuition. Her books have been published in several languages worldwide, and several were #1 Amazon.com bestsellers. They include Divine Revelation, Miracle Prayer, How to Hear the Voice of God, Ascension, Exploring Meditation, Exploring Auras, and her most recent is Maharishi and Me, Seeking Enlightenment with the Beatles Guru. So, Dr. Shumsky and Dr. Raja Murkdov, thank you very much for being with us tonight on Exploring the Bizarre.
Thank you for inviting us.
Oh, this is going to be we're going to really get into this here. I want to ask you, should I call you Dr. Dove or Raja, or how would you like to be addressed?
Yeah, Raja is fine.
Okay, Raja. Now I've known you at least through correspondence for I don't know, 15 years, maybe longer than that. But I never did really learn too much about your background, although I've known you've been very active in interplanetary and global affairs. Were you always this consciousness aware? I mean, let's go back to your youthful days 2 weeks ago, and tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Your beginning and your origins.
Yes, I suppose I was always different in that when I became aware of having my own mind, that I seemed to think differently than the way the average person was being trained to think in the schools. I felt that the schools were training grounds to make Americans good, whatever that was, like consumers, and voting a certain way and believing a certain way, and everything was supposed to be matched up. And you had, if you marched or stepped to a different beat, to a different drum, you were considered odd, at least. And if you believe in extraterrestrials, well, oh my, you were really off the deep end. And then if you were to add health foods back in the day, you were called a health food nut if you were to eat healthy foods. So, yes, I would say, but just the very fact of believing in extraterrestrials and believing in eating healthy foods was good for a human being, and there was more to life than what we were taught in the Catholic schools and even the parochial schools, the public schools, and that we needed to reach out. Now, luckily, I did believe that the United States of America was good because it was offering us the true possibility for freedom in the Constitution and the preamble and in all of the laws. But the actuality of it has not been realized. In fact, it's been taken over by many different beasts. In fact, the whole planet is sort of taken over by many different kinds of beasts.
Now, what would you say was your first experience? I mean, is there any pivotal point, epiphany? I believe that's the word I've heard thrown around from time to time. That headed you in a different direction.
When I was 30, when they say that the Kundalini rises up the chakras in the spinal column, up fully into the third eye and the crown chakra at age 30, is when the man has the opportunity to fully become aware. physiologically. I was in the jungles of the Yucatan, and I had an experience at the foot of the temple after eating some mushrooms that were growing down there. And I had precognition and telepathy, and I could talk with the gorillas, and I was told that I had actually lived in that village before as an extraterrestrial, that I had come to that village and helped to bring information and energy to it, to uplift it, to raise it up to a higher level. And and that I had come back now as the person that I am now to help bring back that information and that technology to a planet that needs to be aware of it now.
Now, who told you that? Who told you that, Roger? Who told you that?
That was what my mind told me, that my research.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. All right. I got you. All right. Were you out of your body, or?
Well, no. I see what you're talking about there. During the time of the mushroom.
Yeah.
That was the main experience that let me know that I was dealing with energies or that were beyond the normal, because I awoke in the field of the pyramids to hear people talking about me, maybe 60 feet behind me.
Uh-huh.
And I thought, well, that's odd. And they were saying how odd I looked sitting over there in meditation pose under the tree. And I thought,
what are we talking about? The 60s?
Pardon?
1960s? Are we talking about the 1960s?
No, this was 1980s.
Oh, 1980. Okay, you're a late bloomer.
The early 80s. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And then I heard the monkeys were calling out, like they were. It was like a fearsome call. And then I realized, I had a realization that no, I wasn't to be afraid of those monkeys, that I had lived there before with them, that I had come in a ship and worked with the village people in that area, including the monkeys, and we all communicated together telepathically. Had you
done a lot of traveling at that point?
No, that was the beginning of my trips.
Oh,
because that was where you might say that I was given my mission.
Okay. And what? How would you describe your mission?
Well, it wasn't until later that I went back up to Arizona from that experience and a few others, and I had hepatitis. You might even say I was dying of hepatitis. I was very yellow. I had yellow jaundice, and I had just barely made it over the border. I was in Tucson, and I went into the doctor there, medical doctor, because I was a naturopathic doctor, but it was beyond my abilities to do anything, to move it. I was really sick, very sickly. And I went to see the MD, and he said, no, sorry, there's nothing much that can be done because you're already very sick with hepatitis, and your liver is swollen up 2-3 centimeters past what is normal, and you'll either die or your liver will get strong, and you'll be okay. But there's nothing that I can do for you. There's no medicine, nothing. So I rode back from that doctor on a bus as I was researching my books on extraterrestrial phenomena and what I was doing in the jungles and why I was researching this sort of in a very possessive way. And I came across a book by Brad Steiger, Revelation, the Divine Fire, where he was writing a report.
We published an edition of that. I don't know if it's the same one or not, because the very editions of that. Yeah. I still have a few copies left, but I think they were the badly printed ones where some of the pages are upside down. But then a good Brad Steiger book, you can read it, standing on your head. So that isn't okay. So Divine Fire, great book. Very one of his finest, no doubt. Yes.
Yeah, it was a wonderful book, and it was in a library, and I had just come out of that doctor's office, and it seemingly fell into my hands, and I was reading it, and in there it said that there was he was reporting an extraterrestrial experience with a guy who was down in one of the South American villages, maybe Ecuador or something, and that he was dying of hepatitis, and his liver had swollen up 2-3 centimeters past what was normal for it, and he was dying, but that he had an authentic extraterrestrial visitation where the extraterrestrial said that they can heal him of that. And he said, "Oh, thank you," and they healed him of it, and he was instantly healed. And I thought, "Oh," I said, "that's what's happening to me." And I said, "Not only am I dying of this, but I also just had extraterrestrial contact." And I put the book down. I said, "Surely to God, I'm reading this miraculous experience to know that I too could be healed of this by an extraterrestrial. I mean, that's why it's happening." And sure enough, I put the book down. And when I got off the book, something told me that I was healed, that I felt better. I did feel better. I didn't have to have something tell me that I felt better. I felt better, and I knew I was better, and I knew I was healed. I didn't need the doctor or even my advice or any advice. The yellowness had gone away, and I was healed right after reading that. So to me, that was like miraculous. That was an event in my life that was taking me another step forward, showing me that the extraterrestrials were guiding me. So that's when I began to realize that they chose me to do a mission. And so I had to figure out, well, what in the world would the mission be? So little things like this began happening all around, all the time, including 3 or 4 other experiences with beloved Brad Steiger and Tim Beckley at some of the UFO expos. That, and nowadays there's many extraterrestrial ambassadors and star seeds, and even Brad Steiger wrote the book Star Seeds about people that aren't from here who actually are star seeds. They're seeded. They're human beings, but they're seeded with seed from the stars, giving them an extraterrestrial perspective on life, a different reason for being.
Did you ever have a face-to-face contact with anyone?
I did in meditation. And
tell us about that. Yeah. Well, tell us about that.
Well, I specifically had visitation with Saint Germain.
And for our audience, I was just going to say, maybe there are some people in our audience that don't know who Saint Germain is. He is the violet ray energy. I mean, that's how I always describe him. But and he has appeared physically to people, especially on Mount Shasta in California, and he is a man who is said to be ageless. But give us your definition on Count Saint Germain.
Yes, that's everything there is certainly very true and accurate description. He's also the ascended master and the hierarchical master of the age of Aquarius, which gives him the status of being in charge, more or less, of all the things that are going on in the age of Aquarius in an official capacity, if there is such. in the hierarchical understanding there is. And I've been to Tibet and also India and meditated, and he's come into meditations there too in India, where he is one of the masters of the Theosophical Society. And one of the lodges that we stayed at there in India was a Theosophical Lodge, where some of the masters and the past presidents of that lodge were in direct touch with him. And so they were like his students. And he would manifest at the grave site.
All right, Tim, I need to interrupt you here because we need to go to our bottom of the hour break. So when we come back, we will continue our fascinating conversation on exploring the bizarre. So stay tuned.
Exploring the bizarre. Now back to exploring the bizarre with two of the most electrifying researchers in the paranormal. Your hosts, Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz.
All right, welcome back to Exploring the Bizarre. And Tim, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask Raja a quick.
Besides, I jumped too high in the chat room, and maybe I'm just too high from all those mushrooms there. I don't know.
There you go.
Anyway, let's pass them around, and you continue on.
All right. Well, and we'll bring Dr. Susan Chomsky into the conversation presently. But Raja, there's Susan. Susan, we're going to ask Raja a quick question here, and then we'll bring you in.
Oh, great.
My question has to do with the magic mushrooms. It's interesting to me because I have heard other people talk about how they feel like that there is an intelligence with these mushrooms, and that by consuming them, it almost, I don't know how to describe it. It almost leads to almost like a permanent connection between you and this intelligence. And I know that Terence McKenna, at one time, him and his brother had speculated that the mushroom intelligence, it's kind of their way to assist humanity, into finding our place, from the just really the material world, and in at least pointing us into a direction that takes us beyond what we would call this reality, and to become aware of other realities, and so I mean, when you had your experience, I mean, did you feel like that this was the case, that you were actually in communication with another intelligence?
Yes, and that's very lovely. That is true. That's in the Bible. It says that all the laborers in the field of the Lord have a mission. And the spirit of the mushroom has a mission too, and you're right, and that was to lead humanity into the realizations of the realities of interdimensional communication with interdimensional species, and the Don Juan in the Carlos Casanenda books called the spirit of the peyote cactus mescaline, mescalito, and said that it definitely had a definite personality and spirit consciousness, and it was there to help educate and teach humans who were very young in their thinking. And so these ancient plant consciousness, and the whale also, the whales and the dolphins are supposed to be very ancient consciousness, can teach humanity. And through ingesting the mushroom, and the mescaline, and the cactus, and various ayahuasca, we can have experiences, and even the frog medicine, injecting frog medicine. We can have experiences with other levels of consciousness that lead us towards even other levels of consciousness, which down there in those jungles for me were aliens. and the monkeys became aliens, and I realized that there was another time, and I was expressing this to a Mayan shaman, and I told him of that experience because the people were laughing at me and saying, "This doesn't happen. These are just legends. This never really happened." And I thought, well, wait a minute. I thought this was true, and that all of you folks down here believe that aliens came here and built these pyramids, and some of them are buried there, and that they had times when there was contact between the aliens and the humans. And they said, "Oh no, that happened hundreds of thousands of years ago, maybe. That's not now. We don't believe that." I know, what's wrong with the people? Even in the ones that believe the Bible, they don't believe in the things that happened a long time ago, as if they didn't really ever happen. And I said, no, these things happen, and there's extraterrestrials come down, and they live with the villagers, and the apes didn't speak some unintelligible language as if they were a monster or an animal. They spoke as intelligently as the human or the extraterrestrial. And all three species got along evenly with even respect. Now, I don't know how that actually worked out, but I thought that was a marvelous principle, that there was a time on Earth when the extraterrestrial and the human and the ape, especially with all these Planet of the Apes movies, when we were all equals and loved one another and treated each other as an equal, a being of equality, not trying to conquer one another. There really was a time on planet Earth when there was peace.
Times have changed, haven't they? I said the times have changed since then, haven't they? Well, Roger, let's bring Dr. Shumsky into the conversation here. So, Susan, thank you very much for your patience. And like we asked Roger, now I mean, you have so many books that you have published here. So. What got you started into all this? A lot of our guests, we talked to them, and they had some kind of childhood experience, or at least became interested in this kind of stuff extremely early on. Was this the case with you as well?
No, it wasn't until Bob Dylan and the spiritual revolution of the 1960s. When I lived in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I was a hippie, and those of us who were flower children, we were really very serious about seeking spiritual awakening, spiritual enlightenment.
Yay for the Jefferson Airplane.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Have you seen the Saucers? One of my favorite songs they did. Yeah.
So I was living there, and I was trying to read up as much as I could about anything related to altered states of consciousness and higher states of consciousness. And I was listening to the gurus, our gurus at the time, who were Timothy Leary and Richard Alpert, who later became Ram Dass. And they were telling us to turn on, tune in, and drop out. So that's what I did. And I was living as a flower child. And so I read the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Leary and Alpert had written a book called The Psychedelic Experience, and they, that was a lot about the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And I was reading the Buddhist scriptures. I was reading Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. And I was reading The Way of Zen and other books by Alan Watts. And in Alan Watts' books, it said that you have to find a meditation guide Well, in 1966 in Berkeley, California, you didn't exactly go to the yellow pages and find meditation guide or anything remotely similar to that. So I asked a roommate, I said, well, Alan Watts says you have to find a meditation guide, so how do I find one? And he said, well, have you ever tried to meditate on your own? I said, okay, I'll give it a shot. So I lay down on my bed. That's how clueless I was. I didn't even know you're supposed to sit up when you meditate. I lay on my bed and I sort of prayed for or asked for a meditation. Immediately, I was propelled into this ecstatic state. I could feel this cord or rush of energy rushing from the tips of my toes all the way to the top of my head. And I felt like I was plugged into a cosmic electric socket, but in a most ecstatic way. And I figured, well, I guess this is meditation. Little did I know that not only did I have my first meditation experience, but also Kundalini awakening all at the same time without drugs or anything, completely sober. And that was my first experience of meditation. And not too long after that, a friend took me to the Transcendental Meditation Center in Berkeley. There wasn't any teacher there, but I signed up to learn. And then 9 months later, I had to wait for 9 months. And then the Summer of Love happened. It was August of 1967 during the Summer of Love. And that's when I learned Transcendental Meditation. So that was my introduction.
Wow, that's amazing, though, that you're the first time that you tried it, that you awakened your Kundalini. I mean, most people, have spent years trying to do that, and a lot have never gotten anywhere.
That's true. But Kundalini is not the end all be all. It isn't the only way that a person can experience spiritual awakening and spiritual enlightenment. It's just one of the signs that the energy is moving up through your body. The energy can move up through your body without you even noticing it. My guru, who was Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, he used to always say that Kundalini just meant that you were not spiritually awake, because if you were spiritually awake, you wouldn't have those sensations. You would just have the bliss sensation. You would just feel the expansion, and that's all.
Now, a lot of people, when they think of meditation and transcendental meditation, I mean, they think of something that, even though I know that meditation was practiced by the Vedics for over more than 1,000 years ago, but that TM itself is a relatively recent introduction to the Western world. I mean, it came about in I think the early 1960s is when most people became aware of it.
Well, in 1959 was when Maharishi first came to the United States. At that time, there was no meditation, virtually no meditation, no mantra, no yoga. Yes, there was a Theosophical Society, which Dr. Raja was talking about, and there were small pockets of people who knew about these sorts of things. But in general, the general population didn't know anything about it. They'd never heard the word mantra. They didn't know what yoga was. They had no clue. And within 10 years, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi made those into household words. So he did so because of the fact that he became so famous. He was the mentor of the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the Doors, Mia Farrow, Deepak Chopra, you name it. He was their guru. And hundreds and hundreds of superstar celebrities learned TM. And Maharishi was on the Johnny Carson show many times. He was on the Merv Griffin show. He was on the cover of every major magazine, Time, Life, Look, Saturday Evening Post. He was everywhere, and everyone knew who he was. That was back in the 70s, 60s, 70s. And then later, really, people forgot about him. But they didn't forget about transcendental meditation. And in fact, it's become like a generic word for meditation, when in fact, it's a trademarked title of the form of meditation that Maharishi teaches. So, but it isn't, like a new technique.
Right.
So much It uses ancient mantras that are just traditional mantras that are used in India that everybody knows. There's nothing unusual about the mantras or anything. But he did teach it in a way. He had the way, the technique of TM helped people to go very deep into meditation very quickly and really easily. So that was what was revolutionary about it.
Well, and I think that a lot of people first became aware of TM because of its popularity with, like you said, with celebrities, especially the Beatles and the Rolling Stones.
That is correct. And when the Beatles went to India to spend a couple months with Maharishi, everybody knew about it. It was a big deal at the time, 1968. That was 50 years ago.
Oh, my gosh. And one of the interesting things to me was how big of an influence, especially with the Beatles, TM and the Maharishi's teachings were. I mean, you could see really a radical change in their music from, before and after.
Absolutely. They learned transcendental meditation in August of 1967, the same month that I learned. They learned later in that month, the same month. And after that, their music really changed. It became very spiritually oriented. The lyrics were very spiritual. But even before that, as soon as they got into LSD, that's when their music started to really change a lot, because they started singing about things like the Tibetan Book of the Dead, turn off your mind, relax, and flow downstream. That song is about that book, the psychedelic experience, actually. And so you can really see it in their lyrics, altered consciousness, higher consciousness. They were really taking a lot of LSD, the Beatles. Mm-hmm. And then for about 5 minutes, they stopped when they learned transcendental meditation, because there was required, you couldn't learn TM without stopping taking drugs. So yeah, they learned and they stopped. But they started it again soon after that. In fact, it got worse, especially with John Lennon, because he became a heroin addict.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know George especially was at first was really into the whole psychedelic movement, but a lot of his songs and music really do seem to reflect that TM influence a lot more, I think, than like John and Paul later on.
Yes, that's very true. His music is very spiritually oriented. And even the song, which is My Sweet Lord, it has some Sanskrit words, which are Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, or Guru Deva Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. And that particular verse, those verses are from the Guru Gita. And those are the words that are in what they call the puja ceremony that is done when you learn transcendental meditation. They do a ceremony, and they sing those words during the ceremony. And the words themselves, they mean the following. They mean the Guru is Brahma, Vishnu, and the great Lord Shiva. The Guru is the eternal Brahman, the transcendental absolute. I bow to the supreme Guru, adorned with glory.
All right, let me interrupt you here because we are coming up to our top of the hour break. So when we come back, we will continue our journey into the consciousness with Dr. Raja and Dr. Susan Chomsky on Exploring the Bizarre.
Exploring the bizarre. Your e-ticket ride into the world of the paranormal. Strap yourself in as we traverse the universe, exploring the unexplained. UFOs, ghosts, lost worlds, cryptozoology, as well as other dimensions. It's time to take back the night. Now, your electrifying hosts of Exploring the Bizarre, Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz.
All right, welcome back to the second hour of Exploring the Bizarre. And tonight we are talking with Dr. Susan Shumsky and Dr. Raja Murk-Dove. So, Susan, I want to continue our conversation here. And what led you to write the book, your most current book, Maharishi and Me, Seeking Enlightenment with the Beatles Guru? I would...
I wish I had a cosmic answer for that.
Yeah,
but I'll tell you the truth.
Okay, go ahead.
I was at a publisher. I was sitting with an editor in her office at Macmillan Publishing, and she was looking at what I was proposing to her, and she said, after she looked over my proposal and so on, she said, "The book I want you to write is the book about your life. That's the book I'm interested in." This is in 1998. And it was 2 years after my first book was published, which was 1996. So I said, okay, I can write that book. Meanwhile, within a few months, she was fired from that publishing company.
Oh, no.
And so, meanwhile, I had already started in this endeavor, which took me years and years to do. And so I completed it. But, meanwhile, I tried to sell it several times through my agent, and I could never get it sold. And I think it's because I didn't have the right angle for it. But then finally in 1916 or 17 or whenever I got my contract, I finally got a contract with Sky Horse. And so the book came out. And I'm glad that it took this long, because everybody tells me it's such an amazing book. And they tell me it's so well written. I mean, everybody says it's so amazingly well written. So, it took me forever to write it, and I edited it 50 times, but it's a good book. So that's the truth of why I wrote the book.
Okay, all right. Well, I know that I've been enjoying it.
Great.
The version that you sent me, and and I have to admit, I mean, it really came out at a great time, because I was just wondering when I started reading it, how many people anymore really remember this part of music history, or just history in general, because I remember at that time, it was such a big influence on society, and now it's just not so much.
Well, but strangely enough, more popular than ever. Mm-hmm. Meditation and yoga are now the big thing. Right. Especially yoga is the thing, So that influence has definitely lasted, and it's becoming, and even Transcendental Meditation itself is enjoying a huge resurgence because of the David Lynch Foundation, which has been teaching a lot of celebrity superstars to meditate. And also they're endeavoring to teach people who are in need, who are suffering, like people in prisons, kids at risk, veterans, women who are abused. They're going over after those kinds of populations to try to help them and really reach out to them. So, yeah, TM is definitely becoming cool again, let's put it that way. When people like Katy Perry are going to the Vatican and giving lectures on TM at the Vatican, which she did about a month ago. So that's
long overdue.
Yeah.
Hey, did you ever get to meet any of the Beatles firsthand?
No, I did not. Okay, so I learned the same month as they did, and then I started applying for teacher training. I started applying to every course I could apply to, because I was so entranced with Transcendental Meditation, and my life had changed so dramatically that I really wanted to become a teacher. So I started applying, and I kept getting rejected over and over and over, because they kept telling me that I was too young. So in fact, I did apply to the course that the Beatles went on, but I was too young, so I didn't get accepted. So Mia Farrow's sister, Prudence, dear Prudence Farrow, she got to go to that course, though, because her sister went. Because she was getting, the same thing happened to her. She kept getting rejected and rejected and rejected because she's the same exact age that I am. But finally, I did get accepted, and I went to India. The course started in 1970, and the first, January of 1970 it started. And that's when I spent 6 months with Maharishi there in Rishikesh, India. The course itself was 3 months, and then I spent another 3 months with him and about 6 other people. There was hardly anybody there, so I had a lot of private time with him during that period of time, and it was quite an experience. And I was 21 years old at the time. That was the first course where he allowed younger kids to go.
What would you say were your biggest revelations after meeting him? I mean, how did it exactly transform your life?
It was really TM that transformed my life, not necessarily meeting Maharishi. It was the technique of TM that changed my life dramatically, because I had suffered a lot. I was very unhappy, and also I had taken these drugs which caused me to have a mental breakdown. LSD had caused me to have a really terrifying and horrifying mental breakdown. And once I stopped taking the psychedelic drugs and learned transcendental meditation, for the first time in my life, I experienced something I'd never experienced before, and that was happiness. I had never really been happy. So it was quite a dramatic change. I felt so happy, and I felt so calm and peaceful and integrated, and I was no longer having LSD flashbacks all the time and horrible, really terrifying, scary hallucinations and experiences. So my life changed so much for the better that I became a TM walking advertisement. I was like trying to get everybody else. It was like, okay, Susan, we've heard enough. Stop talking. We don't want to hear you anymore. So anyway, I became a TM teacher. And then I also spent actually 22 years in Maharishi's ashrams. And 6 of those years I spent on his personal staff.
And when did you finally come back to the United States?
It was 1976 when I came back to the United States. Maharishi told me to leave and come back to the United States because he said, "You're too dependent on me as a person. I won't always be here. You should go." So he sent me away, and that was completely devastating. It was so horrible. Oh my God.
Now, did you find when you got back that the country and the atmosphere had changed either for the good or not so good?
Yeah, when I came back to the States, it was just, oh gosh, it was such a contrast to Switzerland. I'd been living in Switzerland with Maharishi for all those 6 years. It was mostly in Switzerland, which is this pristine and beautiful country. And, there's cowbells and alpenhorns and velvety green countryside, hills, and you're ready to burst out in song like The Sound of Music or something. It was just like paradise in Switzerland. And then I come back to New York City, where it's like, oh my God, 1976 in New York City. Wasn't the best time in New York City, if you recall. I don't know if you were around at that time, but
I've been here. I've been in the same spot here for like 47 years.
Right.
I haven't moved, but now I'm being totally surrounded by skyscrapers.
Exactly.
I mean, if you've been to New York like in the last couple of years,
yeah,
they all look the same. And they just go up and up and up, and there's no individuality. And it's, you go out to dinner and it's $100, and that's if you go by yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah, it has lost. It's I don't know. I guess basically it's aimed at a different. I was going to say class of people. I'm not into class structure that much. I mean, but it just seems like it shut out the rest of the world. I suppose if I had it to do again, I maybe should have. Well, I would have liked to have traveled more myself, and now my health has gotten to the point where it's hard to get around. But that was always my big pleasure in life, is to just head out on the open road. How many countries have you been to?
Oh, I never really counted how many countries I've been to. I've been to a lot of countries, and I've been to every state in the United States because I live in an RV and I have no home base.
Oh,
but not only do I have an RV, but I also travel really a lot because I produce tours to sacred destinations. I produce seminars at sea. I produce holistic conferences at sea. And
I'm surprised.
I'm surprised I haven't.
I'm surprised I haven't run into you like in Sedona or something along those lines.
Yeah, I've been there. Been just about everywhere. It's I travel really a lot, and and people tell me, oh, you need to get a house, you need to settle down. I don't know.
Why would you want to do that? Well, no way. Man. My niece's daughter just bought a motor cycle, and I told her, man, now you got freedom. Get out on the road and just keep. Well, she has done a bit of traveling, but just keep going. You know, I mean, if you could be self-sufficient and be able to go out and do all of that, fine. Now, Dove, there, Mr. Dove. Looking at your resume, it looks like you've been everywhere but maybe China.
Yeah, that's about true.
And maybe North Korea, which I wouldn't suggest offhand. But,
yeah, I didn't
not unless you play basketball. Then maybe you're pretty safe. But where did you find in your travels that were the most spirit? I mean, where were the people? Not necessarily meditating every day or going to church or even having UFO sightings, but which places would you say were more consciously aware of everything that was going on?
Well, in a sense, I found Hawaii and India to be the most alive with spirit energies, and I think the most aware. I don't know, maybe California.
That's kind of a surprise. Where do you live now? Are you in Florida?
Yeah.
That's what I thought. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you have traveled though. I mean, even here in the United States. I mean, your base of operation has varied from time to time.
Yes. We've centered in Scotland and England, Glastonbury, London, Mexico, Central America.
Well, give me a ticket. You know, I've been to. Yeah. Oh, I've never been to Egypt. Did you like Egypt? I mean, were you tuned into it?
Well, it's a very enslaved country, and it's been enslaved for so long that there's not much. It's nice to look at the pyramids and the Sphinx and the museums, but they're all, it's like in a hostile territory. It's been taken over by people who don't appreciate or understand what it's all about, and they just use it as tourist traps.
We have a lady. I guess she's back in Australia now that we stay in touch with, and she moved there. She got married and moved to Egypt, and she could not even open a post office box on her own. She had to get her husband to sign the papers for her. So I don't know. I guess maybe perchance it maybe has improved in that. I know women are allowed to drive. I don't have a sexist attitude, but I think a lot of people, regardless of their gender, should be kept off the road. I mean, for sure. So what is your main scope of operation today? I mean, what do you? I know you've worked with me in sending out and distributing information to literally a ton of people. You probably have the largest uh, email list of anybody that I certainly know that's plugged into all of this. How did you generate that, and what do you kind of what do you kind of into yourself? I see all these other mailings that you do, but I'm not too aware of your own shenanigans there.
We started the New Age marketing program by working with the International New Age Trade Show out of Denver.
Oh yes, yeah, I went to one of those.
And yes, and then we have marketing teams and New Age websites and buyers of New Age products all over the world. And then we formed an email marketing program so that people that didn't want to have to go to the expos could still stay in touch with each other over the internet. So it's been very good to have over 100,000 readers of people who stay in touch, and it's very helpful in selling products and staying in touch. And what I'm doing now is working for lightparty.com as the ad vice president, and the head of that team is a medical doctor with the globalpeacefoundation.org. And this is a program to bring health, wealth, peace, freedom, and justice to all people in the United States. And it's a new political paradigm party called lightparty.com. Health, wealth, peace, and freedom to all people by the truth, by realizing that one happy, joyful family of love and light. And all we need to do is get together and love one another, and it's a reality. Instead of having fights and wars and killings, we can actually care for each other and love one another. And that's the extraterrestrials' message: was how can we come down there and have a peaceful landing and be amongst people when you're killing everybody? It's like would be like landing in a den of rattlesnakes.
Oh man, come on. They're already talking about having a space force. I don't know who. I can't imagine that our president is too aware of the cosmic beings that might exist all this around us, parallel dimensions and other time zones and things like that. So I don't know exactly. He's going to protect us from the Democrats, I suppose. I have no idea. It just seems very, very peculiar. But that's what it is. But now, okay, did you ever see like a fleet of UFOs or go inside a ship?
Yes. Yes, and yes, but that's not the specific scope or focus for me. Was to actually go inside a spaceship and fly around and go to different planets. Of course, that would be wonderful, but I don't think that was the reality. That's possible now. We don't really have ships that come here and they say, okay, let's go pick up the people down there in the third house on the left and give them a ride to Saturn today. It doesn't really happen like that. But what I found out is that there are advanced beings that live in higher dimensions and even other planetary bodies, and that there is a better way of living than how we're living on this planet.
How about inside the Earth? A hollow Earth?
I was just going to mention that. In the inside of the Earth is Talos, and there's beings that live on the inside of the Earth who are also, they live down there because the outside got into warring and killing and fighting. So they all went inside and they said, we're not going out in there anymore because it's like living in a den of rattlesnakes. So the higher dimensional beings and the inner earth beings don't want to come out and have relations with humanity yet, because they consider humanity a backward, fallen race, group of people that are still killing one another, and they're not learning to live with one another. And until they do, this prophecy or this time of peace, when all nations, including the inner earth and the other planets, will all get together, is sometime off in the future. I remember.
Has it gotten better or worse, do you think?
God, it seems to me like it's gotten worse in some ways, but I'm told that's not true. It just seems worse. And when the outer seems to worse, we can know that the inner is moving and doing what it needs to do. You know, I used to really work avidly when I was younger, with lots of energy and and motivation for peace, to work and lecture and go around and talk about peace and now I just sort of relax and realize that it's all coming about, whether I ever lived or not, or whether I know about extraterrestrials or ever saw them. The world is still going on, and things are still happening, and people are dying left and right of us. But yet, the truths and the reality. Mm-hmm.
You, for many years, had a really wonderful soulmate that you worked with. We got a break coming up here.
Yep, let's take our break here, and we'll continue on the conversation when we come back for the last segment of Exploring the Bizarre. So stay tuned.
We got cheated out of time.
Now back to Exploring the Bizarre with two of the most electrifying researchers in the paranormal. Your hosts, Timothy Beckley and Tim Swartz.
Back again, and it's the final segment of Exploring the Bizarre for tonight. And Susan, while we've got you here real quick, why don't you tell us a little bit about your UFO cruise that's going to take place in October of 2019?
Yeah, I do these holistic themed cruises, and they're really a whole lot of fun. And we invite various speakers and authors and teachers and researchers and investigators and so on to come on the cruise ship. And then, we go on a cruise. And we use the conference room on the cruise ship. And so we have a conference at sea. So we're on the cruise. We're enjoying all the amenities of the cruise, but we're also learning. We're having a wonderful time with the teachers that come on these cruises. So I've done already 15 of these, and they've been extremely successful and really so much fun. So I'm doing this UFO cruise. That'll be October 6th to the 13th of
where are you going?
2019.
We're
going to go from San Diego to Mexico. So we're going to go to Cabo San Lucas, Puerto Vallarta, and Mazatlan.
Ooh, nice.
All right.
Yeah, we're going to go on All in America, which is a really nice cruise line that has fantastic food. And we're going to visit some of these amazing places. For example, near Mazatlan, there's an amazing petroglyph site that's a UNESCO heritage site that nobody knows about and never goes to. In fact, really the only groups that ever visit there are my groups that I take there. But it's a wonderful, really important archaeological site. It has 1,000 petroglyphs along this gorgeous beach there. And so it's a fabulous destination. And I always find these really rare destinations to go to at the ports whenever we go to these places. And often I'll invite like a Mayan elder, like, for example, Elizabeth Araujo. I'll have her, she's from the Council of Mayan Elders in Guatemala. And I invite her to come and do a fire ceremony right there on the land at one of the like Maya temples or something like that on our cruises. So we have very unusual kinds of shore excursions and always some kind of sacred ceremony or something like that. So my next cruise actually is going to Tahiti, and that's coming up in a couple of weeks.
Oh, gorgeous place.
Yeah. Society
French,
Islands and French Polynesia.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I actually spent a vacation there with Pamela Anderson.
Okay. Sounds good.
That was good. Yeah, well, she wasn't in the same. Actually, she wasn't a great superstar in those days, and she was doing a special for Showtime or something like that, the exotic girls of the Polynesia or something like that. It was it was an extra a bonus that they didn't tell me about when I signed up for the tour. So I mean, it was it worked out pretty pretty well, and it's of course it's near Bora Bora,
right,
and you get to handle the moray eels. If you're not afraid of being electrocuted by them, which actually is a superstition, because what happens when you get there and there are the moray eels, and people are like, they're giving a little shock out and maybe lighting up a little. The little children of the village, like 8 years old or 10 years old after school, go down and pick up the moray eels and pretend to throw them at the tourists or something like that. So I don't. It's not like Crocodile Haven, so I don't think you have to worry too much, about it. And but fabulous place to visit. And even years ago, when I went there, you could grow 2 ounces or 2 pounds of pot or something on your own land. Whatever. I mean, everybody. So I mean, not that I was a great pot smoker, but I do remember the tour guide coming along with a pipe to help me through the hot summer afternoon.
Right.
And it has quite a history.
That's cool. So I think probably a lot of the people listening to this show would really like to would enjoy going on the UFO cruise, because I think that's quite a theme for your show.
Well, so, it's probably our most what would you say, requested topic. Maybe by us, because we're the host, Tim, wouldn't you say that?
Yeah.
I mean, but, we keep it going, UFOs, and they like cryptozoology.
Ah, yeah.
Well, what's the website if people want to find out more about the UFO cruise?
UFOcruise.com.
Oh, that's easy.
UFOcruise.com. Yeah. And I don't have any speakers up yet. In fact, some of the pages are not all even done because I just put it up recently.
Well, you have a little bit of time there.
Definitely. It's 2019, October 2019. So UFOcruise.com is the place to go.
Well, you got to get a few local UFO people, to meet you out there at the ruins or wherever you're going to go to describe what's been going on. Mexico, of course, has been a very, very, active place as far going back. Dove, wouldn't you say? Remember back in the early 1950s, they were even having contacts and all down there. George Adamski, he was invited down to lecture, and they sold out a bull stadium, whatever you call that, like the outdoor stadium, and they had a fellow there. He was a chauffeur. I think he actually drove a rundown taxi or something. But they called him the chauffeur, and he had a contact pretty much similar to what Adamski claimed to have had. And they spoke together. He was a celebrity, and Adamski was pretty well known south of the border as well. So, where did you find now? You did say you had a couple of UFO sightings yourself. Where did you have like your most reports or concentrated area? Doug?
Maybe he just disappeared.
He's up in the higher dimension there.
Were you speaking to me?
Yeah. No, I was asking if you ever went to an area that you felt was a
I thought
lot
you were
more.
asking Susan.
Well, we'll take it. We'll take it around the table here. That was electrifying as far as the UFOs went. I know personal sightings or other things that you had heard about while you were there. Any place you can think of offhand that was really energized as far as the spaceships are concerned?
Well, I know in Mexico, in the Yucatan, in Oaxaca, and Merida, and Palenque, and even Guatemala, they believe very much in extraterrestrial intermingling with the people that helped to build those temples.
Yeah. Now, I found a spot. I went down there one time. It was called the blowhole, and it was out in the out on the shoreline, and the water would come. It was like a Yosemite Park or something. The water would roll through there and shoot up into the air every 25 minutes or so. Right on time. It was predictable. And I said, "Oh, this is great. It's a good tourist attraction." And then I go into town, and they were big in doing these like felt and velvet paintings, and they had this tapestry all over town with a UFO hovering over this tourist attraction, the blowhole. And I tried to communicate with a couple of people. They said, "Yeah, there were many sightings along the coastline." I don't know whether they had a base under the water there, or were just coming because it was a glamorous place. Perhaps they like to do a little bit of tourism themselves. I mean, why go to an ugly spot when you can go to Mexico and hover above some beautiful place?
And then, but that reminds me of a place in Hawaii where they love the dolphins, and they said that the dolphins have a UFO base right off the beach. And some groups of people even wrote books about it, that they see the spaceships going down in the bay, in the sea, and coming out again, and that the dolphins had telepathically communicated to some of the people that go there and do dolphin swims that there's a Lemurian star base right beneath the sea, and it's a crystal made of crystals. So there's an underground crystal city with extraterrestrials coming and going from it, and dolphins live there and can communicate with the extraterrestrials, and I guess the humans that are in the area. So that was a very interesting.
Well, there's a lot
in India.
Yeah, go ahead.
And in India, we had a contact with a group of villagers who said they were in touch with sea mermaids, actual, true, living mermaids, right then and there, and that they had a base off the coast, off where we were right there, and that spaceships would come in and out in contact with these city of mermaids and aquamen, and that was similar to the Atlantis. And even the recent movie, The Justice League, with the Aquaman in there. And we
did a book, Kahuna Power, and I went a couple of times to Hawaii and met with the people there who had studied the different legends, and they have their own name and all for UFOs, and they see them quite frequently coming up out of the volcanoes there and going across the sky, and some of them actually land in people's trees and on their roofs and things like that. There's a whole Hawaiian culture. In fact, Jimi Hendrix, there's an old video back from the 70s, I think it's called Up Rainbow Bridge, and at his concert that he had there on Maui, after the show, he plays a couple of songs and all. he goes into a tent of some sort, and he sits cross-legged on the ground, and he shares with the other people there stories about the Space Brothers. And for I don't know, about 10 minutes or so, he sits there and he raps. And they had UFO sightings during his performance there, but they were having UFO sightings anyway. I mean, I don't know whether, I'm sure the music brought them in closer, his stunning guitar work, but they did have other, I've been there and I've talked to other people who've had sightings on a pretty regular basis. And of course, when the volcano is ready to explode, the goddess Pele with her flaming red hair is often seen walking along the highway, and people will pick her up. She'll be like hitchhiking, and she'll sit in the car and say not a word, but usually, she'll disappear, and then a day or two later, the volcano will, erupt, and the lava will start flowing.
Yes, when my wife and I were there, they used to call her Pele because she was a small, older Oriental woman, and that's who the legend of Pele is. When she came back, she appears a small, older Hawaiian woman hitchhiking, and they said you better make sure you pick her up. So whenever our car would break down and Moira would hitchhike, they'd pick us up in a minute. Nobody would dare pass us by because that might be Pele.
Now you say you're in touch with her, that she is on Venus?
Yes, good, because we did an interplanetary mission together for 27 years on this planet, and our teachings were that we weren't from here, we were from other planets. So she was from Venus and I was from Jupiter, and we were here doing a mission for the people. So when she passed on, it wasn't the end. She just went to Venus, and so she's there now. And there's been so many instances that have occurred in my life that make me know that she really is on Venus, and that we're communicating, and she's still in touch with me and still assisting the work that we're doing. And so it's very important that people know that their loved ones are twin flames, they're soulmates. When they die, that they don't just die and never see them again.
That's
really
fabulous. That's fabulous. Well, Susan, I wanted to ask you, Susan, have you ever had any UFO experiences or anything out of the paranormal?
Well, I have mystical, paranormal experiences all the time. I communicate with divine beings. I communicate with ascended masters, and all the things that Dr. Raj has been talking about. I have experienced these kinds of things. As far as UFOs, when we were up on Amantani Island in the middle of Lake Titicaca in Peru, and people go on tours to Peru every year through my Divine Travels company. I have a company where we have people can go there anytime, but we have a set set tour for the solstice, for the June solstice every year. So one time we were up there on Amantani Island, which is, as I said, in the middle of Lake Titicaca. It's a very steep island. You walk up, it's probably 1,000 feet as you walk up, as far as the altitude goes. And it's at 40,000, it's at 14,000 feet. So it's really high altitude. And we were doing a ceremony up there. There was a shaman, and he was doing a fire ceremony. And in the middle of the fire ceremony, where there was about 30 of us on that particular tour, and there was a sighting of a what we thought was a flying saucer that visited us during the ceremony. So yeah, that was the only time I've ever had any kind of experience like that.
Well, we have one of our authors. I have a publishing company. Joshua Shapiro has been to Peru. Of course, he's big. He's written on the crystal skull. He has a collection of them, and he's had UFO experiences while he was in Peru. And in fact, we have a series of books by George Hunt Williamson. Roger, I'm sure you're familiar with that name, and he talks about his. He talks. He wrote under the name of Brother Philip about the sun disk from Mu, which is supposed to be buried up there. Somewhere. It's an enchanting country, for sure, and an experience that people should, if they have the opportunity to get involved in. So now, I have to ask you there, Roger, about the Ashtar command. Have you ever done any direct channeling yourself?
Yes, I do. I did. I came in touch with the Ashtar command in a very special way, and at that time we were given inner circle meetings and workings with Ashtar and Manka and Cortron in the mountaintop of California, and there was a temple built for them, and they came and we sat in council with them, receiving lots of messages from Ashtar and Lord Manka and Cortron from the Space Confederation.
Well, that must have been Bob Short. Was Bob Short with you?
No, but we met him at another time.
Because Corton, he always channeled. Yeah, Corton.
Yeah, and he went with us in a UFO meeting down in the Yucatan. He went with us when we went to the temples there in the pyramids. He was doing with the Blue Rose Ministry.
That's right. Yeah, he's one of the last remaining Giant Rock boys. He still lives with Shirley out there in Cottonwood, I believe, is where they have their home. And what is the latest stuff? People say to me, "Well, what's the latest from the Ashtar Command?" Because there aren't a lot of people that are publishing their channeling messages anymore.
Well, I don't know. One thing that I noticed is there began to be 101 Dalmatian variations of Ashtar channelings with the proliferation of the internet, and everybody and their brother was confused about what was the real Ashtar and who is the real Ashtar, and is there a real Ashtar? And it's the same story, that goes on even about Jesus and Buddha and Muhammad and all the spiritual teachers, and then they come and they go, and then they become questioned or crucified or in doubt as to whether they really even existed. And I think the Ashtar phenomenon might be going through that kind of a situation.
How do you know if you're having a legitimate contact, or the person that you've gone to channel for you, that it's legitimate and not some wayward spirit?
Well, that is a very good question, and it's been a question of ages. And I think there's two ways that we've been told to know, and one is that our inner voice will let us know the truth. Our inner feelings, our inner gut, the gut feeling. And if we don't seem to have that, then they say by their fruit you will know it.
You should. Yeah. So we are running down to the wire, as they say here. One last time, Roger, how do people get in touch with you? What is the website?
Stardoves.com.
All right, and look for some great. It has to be put on the mailing list. Sure.
Yeah. For that, they can go to marketingwiththestars.com and see our marketing program, and they can send email to me asking to go on the list to ra@stardoves.com.
All right, and Susan, one last time, what's your main site there?
drsusan.org. That's Dr. Susan, And then I have also Divine Travels, that's plural on the travels, divinetravels.com. And the UFO, also UFOcruise.com.
And of course, your books are available, I'm sure, on Amazon. And I want to thank our producer Tina, our guest this evening, my co-host Tim Schwartz. I want to thank Peter for his indulgence in getting us up on YouTube every week. I want to thank Carol and Helen and all the great listeners out there. Tell your friends, tune in every Thursday night for Exploring the Bizarre. And Tim, I guess we'll be talking over the weekend. We've got some really great shows, I think, lined up in the next couple of weeks, right?
That's right.
And anyway, here comes the master of us all. And so, good evening, one and all.
You've been listening to Exploring the Bizarre with hosts Timothy Beckley and Tim Schwartz. They're taking back the night by jetting non-stop across the cosmos in search of the truly bizarre and totally unexplained, with you as their co-pilot. Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. For more information on Exploring the Bizarre and hosts Timothy Beckley and Tim Schwartz, check out their KCOR Digital Radio Network page. Follow their YouTube channel at MRUFO 1100. Exploring the Bizarre.